Hi everyone, it's Lou Collins. Today I'd like to show you a card style that really works beautifully with the new Creative Craft Products Spotlight on Occasion stamp and die sets. There's lots of different designs that you can choose from. I'm going to be featuring the poppies here because I just think they're absolutely beautiful, although I'm not going with the traditional reds and greens that you'd usually see with poppies. So this is creating an aperture in the front of your card that peeks through to a design that echoes the front on the inside as well, and you can add colour and things into that as well. I'm going to be doing a bit of heat embossing, some die cutting, some stamping, so stay tuned for lots of tips and tricks. As always, we'd love it if you could subscribe to the CraftStash YouTube channel if you haven't done already, and don't forget to hit that thumbs up button too. So let's get started. Now these die sets are featuring just over a 4.5 inch stamps in each design. So this one is square, this is the poppies as I say. I'm going to be stamping this twice. So I'm going to be stamping it onto white cardstock. So I've cut myself a card base of just plain white stamping cardstock that is just about big enough to fit that stamp on. So it's kind of almost about 4 3/4 of an inch there, and then I've done the same with this gorgeous teal colour cardstock as well, and I'm going to stamp that onto there. I've also created myself a card base. This is ever so slightly larger. So this is a square card base. As you can see, both of my mats will fit on there with a bit of a border. And with this, it's going to be a 10-fold card. So I've got my black stamping cardstock. Again, this is from Creative Craft Products, exclusive to CraftStash. Everything I'm using is linked down below here. And this is going to be folded at the top, as I say, a 10-fold. And this allows me to do this technique perfectly. Now first on to the stamping. I'm going to be using the Creative Craft Products stamping platform, also again linked down below, and I'll mention it again at the end for you. And I'm going to put my stamp just inside my platform. The first thing to do though is to put my paper down. So let's stamp it in black first to see what a beautiful image we get. Now at the moment I have got my Sizzix sticky grid inside my platform, so I don't need to worry about my magnets. I can simply place my cardstock onto the sticky grid, press that down so that's not going to be going anywhere, and I can then put my stamp on top. Just making sure that's nice and central, I'm going to fold over my platform, lift up the stamp, and because this is a large stamp, a large solid stamp, I'm going to just be making sure that there's no air bubbles underneath by lifting the corners and pressing down from the centre just on each of the 4 corners. Now this way I'm not actually moving the stamp on the platform anywhere. I'm just lifting and repositioning, or making sure there's no air bubbles underneath a small area at a time. This just aids stamping. If you do have an air bubble under your stamp, whatever the brand is, it could interfere with the stamping and give you a little bit of a gap in your design. So I'm going in with a black stamping ink. This one is Memento, and I'm going to put this all over my stamp. Now I've not stamped this before. Usually I'd go in and I'd prime my stamp if I've not used it before, but I'm going to just do the priming quite quickly by stamping and then re-stamping if I need to. So pressing this down with the platform, making sure that I'm pressing my fingers over the entire detail there. There, it's absolutely perfect. I don't actually even need to prime that stamp anymore or re-stamp it. I'm now going to repeat this with the teal cardstock that I've got, but a little bit differently, making sure my stamp is completely clean and there's no ink left on there. I'm going to reposition this over the teal, lift it up again so it's ready to stamp. I'm using an anti-static bag here on the cardstock. This is just going to ensure that when I apply my embossing powder, that none of those little particles are going to get any static interfering with where they lay. This time I'm going to be using my clear embossing ink. This is the Wow brand. There's lots of brands on CraftStash of clear ink that you can purchase. This is one of my favourites, but in honesty, I don't find a great deal of difference between any of them. I do like to have a large pad though, for when I've got large stamps like this and I need to cover the area quite quickly. Now being clear, this one isn't quite so dramatic when you lift it up. You don't really see the results too much. You can hold it up to the light if you want to make sure your stamping's perfect. I obviously had a little bit of black ink left on the stamp, so you can kind of see that a bit, but not too much. I'm just going to lift that off. I got a piece of spare cardstock here to go underneath because I need to capture my embossing powder into something, and sprinkle the powder all over the surface, tapping it off, and you can see the gold is just sticking to the inked areas. I'm going to use some tweezers to hold my cardstock away from my mat because I don't want my mat warping with the heat from the heat gun. And I'm going to now heat set this powder. And if you've never seen heat embossing before, it's a fantastic technique. You don't need many materials. You need a heat gun, your embossing ink, and your embossing powder. There's lots of different colours available and different kind of finishes. But this is the technique that actually drew me to card making right in the very beginning. I saw someone doing this in a store as a demonstration, and I just loved it. I fell in love with it, and I still love it every single time. Look at the magic of that powder turning metallic. How beautiful is that? So now we have our black and white version and our gold and teal version. So we're going to want to be placing these together on the card. So the blue on the top, the black and white in the center. We'll do that in just a moment. And this is where the dies that come with the stamps work so well together. So I'm going to be cutting twice here. I'm going to be cutting first of all the larger die into the front. Now I can pick and choose anywhere on here to create the spotlight. So I think I'm going to go in the bottom left hand corner just here. It doesn't need to be a whole part of an image, it can just be a section of an image. But I'm going to use my CraftStash low tack tape here just to hold the die still. This will not lift up your heat embossing, for example. It will affect any inking that you may have done onto your cardstock. So I would say do any inking, adding colour like that later. Now I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. Just gently release, and I'm going to reuse the tape. Now I can use this again on another card. It just looks like a beautiful scalloped circle cut from a pattern paper. So I'll put that to the side for another time. And then I'm going to carefully position my mat there onto the card base whereabouts I'm going to want it. So I'm just keeping an eye on the border around the outside. I'm going to take the smaller die now and position this inside that aperture onto the black cardstock there, the card base, where I think it will work best, and use this tape again to tack that down just to the black cardstock. So I can now remove this, which I just used as a guide. And you want to be sure to open your card base up and only run it through open. If you run it through closed, this die is such good quality it will likely cut through both layers of your card base. Now when you place your mat over the top, over the front, you'll notice that you've got this gorgeous frame on the inside as well as the outside of the teal. So that just works so well. Now inside this we're going to glue our black and white version. That should match up perfectly. So just take a look at the front and you should see that you've got the repeated image here from the outside on the inside. So for example, this floral here continues round. Here's the petals for this one, and so on and so forth. And you can really just jig that along a little bit. Just make sure that everything lines up as you need it to. And then adhere both of those layers down with a wet glue. And my preference is the bookbinding glue from Creative Craft Products. Now along with this collection also comes this set of sentiment stamps and dies. These are going to work perfectly with the size of the stamp that we've got here. So the words that you can see on the front here in blue are in die form and everything else is in stamp form. So we can stamp and die cut, whether it be inside the card, outside the card, and mix and match. So I've die cut the word best from gold, which is going to echo that gold heat embossing that we've done on the front. And I'm going to place this on my card. I've actually put glue all over it. I don't need it over it, so that will need to dry before I press that down onto the back. So I'm just going to overlap the aperture there. And then I've stamped the word wishes from black on white cardstock and hand cut that out. The reason I went for black and white, that's going to be a reflection of the colours that are in between, or rather inside the card. So that's going to work really nicely. I'm just going to overlap the word wishes on the best there, just so they look like they're together, one sentiment. And there's a new take on the spotlight technique, using the dies to create an aperture and creating a reflection of that image in monochrome inside the card with the little peek through from the front and lining the images up perfectly. Everything I've used for this card can be found going through this link just here. If you've not done already, we'd love it if you could subscribe to our channel, and we think you're also really going to like this technique video just here. Take care everybody, and I'll see you again really soon.